So if you know anything about Melungeon history, one of the big things that comes to mind is their outmigration from Appalachia. So in today's video, I'm going to go over how you can use AncestryDNA to kind of look to see if that lines up with your family history. We're going to also go over how ethnicity estimates in AncestryDNA aren't really adding up, just like I did in the video with 23andMe. And then we're also going to just look at some cousin names. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to have AI analyze the data from this video and also the video that I did with 23andMe to see what's the thinking on me having Melungeon ancestry just based on that data. So stick tuned, stick around. So welcome back. We're going to be diving into AncestryDNA, like I said. Right off the bat, I already have my AncestryDNA origins up and running. And this is where I wanted to discuss about the ancestry ethnicity estimates. Just like with 23andMe, the bulk is accurate, but the details are lacking, and I'll show you why, because they're actually saying it. In 23andMe, the video that I showed, the video before this, I showed that they're really operating at this most likely interpretation, but that's very close to the 50% interpretation. And now I'm going to show you how Ancestry does this as well. And the interesting thing is the ethnicity estimates that have been updated this year, Ancestry and 23andMe, for me at least, actually are kind of lining up together, which has never happened before. So I wonder if they're getting a lot of the same data points or data sets to work with. But just like with 23andMe, they kind of hide that they're not guessing, I guess. They are guessing, but I'll show what I mean. So if you go here, and so the first one I have here is Southeastern England, Northwestern Europe, 39%. So you scroll down, you'd be like, oh, cool, 39%. That sounds awesome. They used to show this a bit more obvious, I'm pretty sure, in the older updates. But if you go right here and click this I symbol, this information symbol next to the 39% here, it'll pop down and it'll say your ancestral region estimate is 39%. But, again, but it can range from 30% to 57%. So that's over half to less than a third of this southern England or southeastern England and northwestern Europe. So the same thing will happen if we go back and go to northeast England, go to that little I information dot thing there. So it says I'm 18% of this northeast England, but when you look at this, it says the range can go from 4% to 23%. So that's huge. That's, I mean, do you want 4% of your paycheck to be taken out or 23% taken out, right? That's a huge discrepancy. What I think is pretty cool is the regions. That's really neat to look at. But these actual percentages, so like let's go to Netherlands. So if we go down, it's 2% to 13%, but they think it's 8%. They're not really saying how they think it's 8%. But let's say that I really wanted this Portuguese, right, which was showing up in my 23andMe. But I click here, 2%. Oh, it's 0% to 2%. So there's a chance, a pretty good chance, that I have no Portuguese ancestry according to this data. So come down, Sweden, that's cool. Maybe some Viking, which is a whole other video that I will get into. But again, 2%. But it could be 0% to 7%. There was one that was like 0 to, maybe it was Scotland. No, 2% to 21%. It could be a whole quarter of Scotland, Northern Ireland. So that's the Scots-Irish kind of stuff there, which I'll get into as well. But there was one that was like, that's 2%. So yeah, North Wales, West England, 0 to 6%. So yeah, that's something that's pretty concerning. But what's pretty cool that you can dive into to really get an idea of some family history and, dare I say, journeys, because that's what we'll get into. We're going to get into the journeys feature that AncestryDNA has, because this is where the Melungeon migration, hypothesis really comes in. So if we go to journeys, you'll see this whole thing pop up here, this whole East Coast highlighted, colorful areas. So we got early Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas settlers down here. We got early Pennsylvania, that's my grandfather's name there, early Pennsylvania settlers, which is going to be up this way. Georgia, Florida settlers, North Carolina settlers, and that specifically says Appalachia in that one. Southern backcountry in Oklahoma. So again, maybe I'll go over these names. So it's going to be, for these journeys, Georgia mountains and upstate South Carolina. So that's going to be all mountainous Appalachia. You can even look at the actual location there. We're going to have the Alabama Highlands settlers. So that's specific, again, that Appalachia region there. North Carolina and Piedmont. So that's going to be there. The Piedmont in North Carolina was Scots-Irish also. Then we got this Southern Greenville, Western Laurens, and Eastern Anderson County, South Carolina settlers. So again, we got that Appalachia hitting the corner there of South Carolina coming in. Early Western Pennsylvania, so that's going to be that Appalachia with my German ancestry there. And then this southeastern Mississippi, Alabama borders settlers, it's way outside of Appalachia. So Appalachia is going to be up in this region. But coming down, this is going to be in this southern area here. And this is probably indicating some of my Acadian ancestry that I'm aware of, but also the out-migration of Appalachia that we'll get into. So this is a really cool feature to check out if you've never really noticed this before, if you're interested in American history and migrations. I was busy over in the European stuff for a long time, but there's a lot of cool American history, specifically Melungeon history, that we're going to get into. So that's definitely a really cool tool to dive into. So I've already copied and pasted this information onto this little list of questions that I'm going to have for ChatGPT. This is the area down here, the journeys. So I'm going to go over ChatGPT, analyzing this information from the 23andMe initially, then down into the AncestryDNA stuff. So if we go up here, though, to matches, that's where we're going. This is where we're going to get into some cousin names. So I'll be blocking out some information here. But let's see. There's the matches. And then I'm going to go to search over here in the right corner here. And I'm going to type in a last name. So I've been doing the Melungeon names, so that's what we're going to get into. So let's go with Collins. And you can do this with 23andMe also, which I've done. I didn't do it in my other video, but this is where you can do that. And let's try this out. I'm going to enter surname matches in trees for Collins as well. Collins is one of the major Melungeon surnames. So we're going to click that and just search. See what populates. So we got actual Collinses with last names. And we have all these Collinses with trees, with Collins in their trees as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So about 20 or so. And I've gone through and already copied these into my questions for ChatGPT. Let's try, Mullins didn't show up, so I'm not going to do Mullins. Let's try Gibson. That's a major Melungeon name. Let's search with trees and actual people with the surname. Good, and these are actual Gibsons, but also with Gibson in their trees. So we got quite a few here. And let's do Goins. I think there might be one Goins. That's one that's really unique. That sticks out a lot. So let's see if there's a Goins that pops up. There might not be any when I was doing it earlier. Sometimes it kind of glitches and shows no matches, then it starts showing a lot of matches. Okay, here we go. So yeah, we got a few Goins here. Okay, so we got about 4 Goins. And let me spell with the E and S, because that spelling shows up as well. And I Googled it earlier, and it was saying for me to, Google AI was saying for me to look at the Turks of Sumter. So that could be something that I dive into as well. Because again, Melungeons would say that they were Turkish, right? So I think that could be a fun little adventure to go on there. So let's get this loaded with the Goins spelled with an E. So that one showed no results. So again, like it was a little iffy earlier when it popped up. So I'm not sure if it kind of glitches sometimes, but yeah, that's a little tool that you can get some of the surnames going there. So with that, this is kind of what I wanted to take from Ancestry today and put it into ChatGPT and see what it says. And so let's go ahead and do that. So I have these in order. So I want to, first question, what pattern arises when I include my most common surnames amongst 23andMe cousins? The numbers are the amount of cousins with the surnames. And so I'm doing this question a little different than I did in my other video, because there is actually a discrepancy in my case with the names that popped up for the app and then the names that actually popped up in the website on 23andMe. So that was, they'll know what's going on with that. So, and so I'm listing all these cousins here from the website and from the app. They're the same names mostly. It's just the numbers are a little different. And there's a couple, like Parker doesn't show up on the website, and what Adams doesn't either. Doesn't show up in the app. So let me copy that, and then let's see what ChatGPT says about this info. Let's see. Okay. A few clear patterns show when you look at your most common cousin surnames across 23andMe. Almost all these names are at the top of your list are among the most common surnames in the US. That's what we found out from the last video. This zip-like pattern shows up when I was doing this earlier. I guess for example, the app data, power of law, like I don't really know what this fully means. But basically, yeah, the frequency appear, yeah, I don't really know what that means. All right, these are occupational names. We've seen that before. British Isle, heavy. Why the app differs from the number, who knows, from the website. Classic pattern, surname frequency effect among Anglo-American surnames. But let's throw this in there. So how many of these surnames appear in Melungeon records? So I'm extending this question more than just that, because for whatever reason, ChatGPT doesn't always access the internet when it's answering questions. At least that's what I'm thinking is happening. Because when I Google this, it says, yes, a lot of these are Melungeon surnames, or at least even though they're common surnames, they are found amongst the Melungeons. So I'm including that in the question, saying that's what Google found, so that it doesn't get kind of like caught off guard by only having its data. So this is what Google said, is that 21 out of the 22 names are found amongst the Melungeons. But I want to see what it interprets with Google saying this. Okay. So 95% of the names overlap with Melungeon studies. This is a very high overlap. So it's just agreeing with Google's findings. So that's good. So I wanted to give it that information so it doesn't go off on some kind of weird tangent. Now I'm going to ask about the question about the many ethnicities that are amongst my cousins in 23andMe. which I actually finally was able to copy and paste. So if you look here, there's Northwestern European, British Isles, Europe, German, French, Scandinavian, Southern European, Portuguese, Italian, and Sub-Saharan African, West African, all the way down, Filipino even, Cypriot, shouldn't try to pronounce that one, Sardinian, Egyptian, Arab, back up here, there's Ghanaian, Egyptian, all that kind of stuff. So amongst my cousins. So let me copy this question and again see what it interprets this as. So again, the question, what about when I include in 23andMe the advanced filters of my 5,001 cousins that have at least 1% of these ethnicities below? Each number is a relative, and I imagine there's overlap. Let's see what it says. When you apply this filter, a very clear interpretable structure emerges. First, yes, there is massive overlap. We already knew that. The core pattern, British Isles, is the backbone, nearly all cousins. Secondary European layers, French, German, Scandinavian, Southern European, Spanish, Portugal. The key signal, broad, shallow, non-broad European ancestry is interesting, it says. Roughly 6 to 10% of your cousins have detectable non-European ancestry. Why this matters. This is not when you see a single family member with recent African ancestry, a single native ancestry, a single Middle Eastern ancestry. Instead, this is what you see when small amounts of non-European ancestry are introduced early, then diluted over many generations across many colonial families. This is exactly the pattern described in Upper South Appalachian populations, triracial isolate communities, old colonial frontier settlements, just like it said when we did this in the 23andMe. So again, we're just adding, don't want to open that. We're just adding more layers as we're kind of redoing the video in a sense, but I just want to make sure it gets all the data. And then as I do these others, maybe I'll just copy and paste the entire bulk so we're not having to redo this video again. Okay, next include my Cumberland Mountain early British, So this is what I did with my 23andMe video. When you combine the Cumberland Mountains, 5,000 cousins, you see classic frontier diffusion. So there's tertiary key African, indigenous, and West Asian, which is Middle Eastern ancestry. Or the diversity is spread across many cousins. Hundreds of cousins with low levels of signal. Early undocumented admixture. Connection to Melungeon-associated findings. This is contextual, not proof. Again, we're just looking for clues. So again, we went over that. Now I'm going to add the Ancestry Journeys. See what it says. This completes the picture. They do not introduce new pattern. Okay. I thought they would add a bit more cool context to being a lot of Appalachian in there, but ChatGPT wants to say this. So southward and westward frontier spread into the southern Mississippi, Alabama border settlers. So what it's saying is that this is a core Appalachia nucleus, and then spread throughout down south into Alabama settlers and southeast Mississippi, Alabama border settlers. So northern frontier and western Pennsylvania. So that's mostly German, but there was Scots-Irish in there as well from my side. And so let me go ahead and add the surnames that I got from 23andMe and then also from AncestryDNA. Oh, before I do that, it says what this combination strongly suggests. Your ancestry reflects a strong, established Appalachian Upper South population originating in the British borderlands, moving through western Pennsylvania, Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, with early low-level multi-ethnic admixture, preserved and spread through regional endogamy. That's the Melungeon stuff there. Bottom line, final synthesis. The most accurate interpretation is you descend from deeply rooted Appalachian Upper South founder population whose families migrated together across the inland frontier, producing dense cousin networks, repeated surnames, and widespread low-level admixture signals that persist across many descendants today. And then, bam, let me throw in these last surnames. And so now add direct core Melungeon surnames from my cousins that either have these surnames or have them in their tree. So let's throw that in there and see what it says. Is a meaningful escalation of the evidentiary, fancy word, weight, because this shifts the discussion from population level compatibility to line level contact. So that population level means that basically my interpretation is that you belong to the population, like in my case, this would belong me to the population of the Melungeons. And now it's saying I have direct lines to the core Melungeon families. So it says why these surnames are different than Smith or Brown, because the thing is that they are very common. Unlike the very common surnames, several of these are geographically concentrated, historically associated with specific communities, repeatedly documented in Melungeon scholarship, often intermarried with each other. Especially significant here are Collins, Mullins. I didn't have Mullins, so I don't know why. I did have Mullins in 23andMe, so I did have that. The Goins with a different spelling, Bolin with 2 different spellings, and Gibson. Context dependent for Gibson, but relevant in Appalachia, it says. These names appearing together among your DNA cousins in the same regional population is not random. The most important structural pattern, what matters most is not just presence, but how these surnames appear. They are not dominant, but you don't have hundreds. They appear in moderate numbers. They are distributed across multiple cousins. They are embedded inside a much larger Appalachian cousin network. Okay, so what this means and does not mean. It does mean your ancestry intersects geographically with Melungeon-associated family networks, not just demographically, but through real cousin connections. At least one ancestral line likely passed through or married into those communities. It does not automatically mean you descend from a named Melungeon ancestor, your entire family was Melungeon, or every appearance of these surnames is relevant. Overall evaluation, it says the interpretation strengthened from consistent with Appalachian founder populations. 2, contains credible geological intersections with Melungeon-associated family networks within a broader Appalachian population. So again, we're looking for just clues. I threw in the 23andMe evidence, and now I threw in some AncestryDNA evidence just with the regions. It didn't say, or the journeys rather, it didn't say that it added much, but I think they're pretty cool anyway, so that's an aside. But I added the core family names that I did get from 23andMe and AncestryDNA, and it really popped up to be kind of big. So now I'm going to ask it just at the end here, what's its interpretation, confidence level, or I guess I should say percent confidence that I have Melungeon ancestry. Not that I am Melungeon, but that I have Melungeon ancestry based on this data that I've given it. Just this data. And again, we're not using my ethnicity estimates. We're not using my ancestry percentages. We're just using broad information here and then cousin data, and only at 1% for those ethnicity estimates. So even at a confidence level of 90% in 23andMe, there's a possible chance that that 1% sticks around. So let's say, what percent confidence Do you have that? I have Melungeon some, just put some, have some, if I could spell, Melungeon ancestry based on just this data alone. Are we saying, let's just, last time I said 60% to, was it like 80%? We'll say that 80%. Or is it higher? Let's see what's going to give us. Okay. So based only on the data you've presented, I would place the confidence that you have some Melungeon-associated ancestry at approximately 70 to 80% confidence. Not higher than that yet, but not lower than 60%. Now I'll explain why that range, and I'll explain why that range and why it's not 90%. How this confidence is being evaluated. This is not a gut feeling. It's based on weighing independent lines of evidence and how often they occurred by chance in Appalachian populations. I'm using four tiers of evidence, each with different diagnostic strengths. So population and geography, moderate strength. So it's just combining all the geographic stuff there. Diffuse low-level African plus indigenous across hundreds of cousins, moderate to strong evidence there. Surname environment, moderate, so the surnames popping up. And then direct course Melungeon surnames among DNA cousins. This is the key reason your confidence moves above 60%. So the Goins, the Collins, Mullins, Gibson, all of those is why it's pumping it up. This gives it high weight. Putting it together, why it's 70, 80, not 90, why it's not only 50 to 60%. You don't just have population signals, you have line level surname intersections, repeated variant clusters. Again, we're getting kind of nerdy here. But yeah, it basically says, based on the data alone, responsibly stated, I would estimate a 70 to 80% confidence that you have some Melungeon-associated ancestry somewhere in your family tree. So cool. So we got a bit above the 60 with the extra core names and the AncestryDNA Journeys. And also I went over how the ethnicity estimates, specifically for you as an individual, can be iffy, especially if the 0% chance pops up if you go to that little eye icon. But yeah, I think this is pretty cool stuff. I love doing this kind of stuff. I hope you guys do too. I'll be doing a lot more videos in the future. I already have a couple in mind. And yeah, just stick around and continue to learn Melungeon stuff like I'm learning. And thanks for watching.